This computer. All right, we're good. All right. Well, how's your day first? I guess let's start with some human questions before we go too formal.
Pretty good. I'm working outside today, so we're still working from home at our firm.
Okay.
It's kind of voluntary, if you need to go in for, printing or a meeting or whatever.
Mhm.
But for the most part, we're all still kind of working from home. So I have an outdoor setup out on my patio, so it's kind of something like to enjoy when the weather's nice. So
Okay, nice. Yeah, well, we'll definitely have to talk about that with one of these further questions. But I guess a good start is what is your educational background? Um, and then if you have any memories of first kind of being gravitated towards architecture, design, it'd be great if you could touch on those for sure.
sure, yeah, yeah. So I mean, I think it started in high school. Actually, I took a drafting class as a freshman, architectural drafting, and just something. I don't know. I have no idea what drove me to that. I mean, I had always been like drawing, so I'd always
Mhm.
been drawing through my whole life as a kid, drawing cars and buildings and characters, comic books. I was anything graphic was kind of my thing. So I was always taking art classes, and then drafting sort of felt like something to me that where I could, because back at that time it was still hand drawing. It wasn't really
Yeah.
computer yet. So it was something I felt where I could see sort of a career
Hmm.
possibility out of sort of an artistic field.
Hmm.
And then I had a teacher there who he was really involved in the statewide, AIA, which is American Institute of Architects, sort of had a high school design competition statewide. So once every year we would all get on a bus and go to Lansing, the capital, and have a day-long design competition where we have to design a building of some problem. So
Hmm.
it might be a haunted house or
Yeah.
just a house or whatever, whatever the project was. And that really got me. I think that really pulled me in because in high school I was kind of wasn't sure if I wanted to go into art or architecture. Those were the kind of the two
Hmm.
that I was really getting into. And I had a really good art teacher as well. So he was kind of pulling me that way. He's like, oh, you don't want to do that. You want to go into the arts. And it's like, oh man, I was
Yeah.
getting pulled in two different directions. Um, so then I applied to a few different schools, mostly schools in the area, U of M. There's only three architecture schools in Michigan,
Hmm.
and U of M's one. Lawrence Tech is the one I ended up going to,
Hmm.
and then U of D, University of Detroit, Mercy. Um, and then I ended up getting a decent scholarship with Lawrence Tech, so I went there for undergrad.
Hmm.
And sort of with architecture, you have to have a professional degree, so you either have to take a 5-year program or a 4+2. Um, there was only one 5-year program in Michigan, and that was the University of Detroit.
Oh, okay.
It's a little more pricey. I think, actually all of the architecture schools in Michigan are very pricey. At U of M, of course, is
Hmm.
kind of the big one. And then, Lawrence Tech being a private school and University of Detroit are both private schools. So those are very pricey schools for what I went into. But I would say I don't think I really felt like I was committed to architecture
Hmm.
until I would say grad school is, so for grad school, I wanted to go somewhere different. I wanted to get out of Michigan. I
Hmm.
had moved around a lot as a kid. So I was born in Illinois, lived in St. Louis, I lived in Dallas and then Detroit. And then, so I was interested in getting back to some nicer weather.
Yeah.
So I applied to a bunch of Southern schools, UT, Florida, Arizona,
Hmm.
and UCLA, I think, over in LA. So those are kind of the 4 Southern schools I applied to. I ended up choosing UT Austin,
Yeah.
and just the experience. I think for what I had lacked in my undergrad, I'd also wanted to get that experience of a larger college, right? Just everything that goes along with it, the campus life, the culture,
Yeah.
sports, things like that you don't get in a smaller college. So that really pulled me in. And then just having access to great professors. You know, a lot of my professors had their own practice or were leading design at large firms in the area. So starting to, when you start to see, you know, where it might go, you know, seeing people doing what you could envision yourself doing, I think that really pulled me in. And actually, my first job, you know, I got married my senior year of undergrad, actually, or no, grad school. So last year, and so my wife's from Michigan. We met in Michigan. She moved down with me to go to grad school. So we ended up going back up north after I graduated. So I worked with kind of a medium-sized firm up there, and you know, it was actually one of my former professors from Lawrence Tech. He was the design director up in Michigan and at this firm, and someone I always respected and was always great. You know, he was a really good storyteller, always someone who could provide constructive criticism and really help you, you know, better yourself as a designer, as an architect. So that was really exciting that I had the opportunity to go back and work with him. And then I, you know, worked there for 8 years, and sort of the rest is history. I moved around a few times, but that was really where I feel like I evolved as a designer and as an architect. So
For sure. And so when you say evolved, does any of that blend into some core values you have when you are in your design process? Because I know there are architects that are very engineered based and go more towards what's logical, what's structurally best, and there's others that are more emotionally based. So what are your core values insisting of or consistent?
yeah, I mean, I think that was something that I never really thought about. You know, I think at undergrad and at Lawrence Tech, it was all about it was mostly, most of our design tasks were about solving a problem and really only thinking about sort of the form or the appearance, the aesthetics of something, not so much the deeper understanding of how the materials, you know, what's the longevity of the materials, what sort of energy do they use. And I feel like I started to get that more at UT Austin. That was one of the reasons that really attracted me to that program specifically, was they were, you know, they had a really good history of having sort of a well-balanced architecture program that, you know, thinks about the context, makes you understand materials, local culture, you know, the people. That's something that, you know, I never really thought about in undergrad, but, you know, understanding how people can benefit from the space. And you know, when I'm designing, I feel like I can definitely feel the push and the pull. I mean, I think that's sort of the nice thing about architecture as well, is there's quite a spectrum. You know, from one end where, let's say, you're working on projects that are really community focused, community based, nonprofit, all the way to the complete opposite end, which might be like custom residential or you know, working with developers, where it's really driven by the dollar. And the other end of the spectrum is more about, you know, how can we make this benefit society as a whole. So, you know, it really allows you as a, you know, as you're going through the profession to kind of figure out where do you find yourself most engaged. And I honestly, I'd say I'm still searching for that, to be honest. I feel like there are times when I've worked on community projects and I love it, and it's wonderful. But there are other times where sometimes, you know, you want to just be able to have the ability to really focus on one specific idea and not have a group. It's very hard to come to an agreement or come to a decision with a group. You know, the smaller that group is, the much easier it is to kind of help someone guide them through the design process. That's the other thing I think with architecture and design is, you know, it's a little different than other design professions like industrial design. You know, sometimes we are really working on behalf of another, party,
Yeah.
like a client. So they have money, and then they need a contractor to build it, but they need someone to tell the contractor how to translate their vision into something that they can build.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what our role is helping them understand the values of, sure, you could build much more space or much less, a much smaller footprint at a higher quality level,
Yeah.
better finishes, better technology, or you can build more square footage at a lower quality level. That's, boiling it down pretty essential. That's
Yeah.
really our task. And then as far as, I think what drives me as a designer is always trying to help clients see things they didn't think of before, or exceed their expectations.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of people, they don't really understand what we do. Honestly, I think it's a very mysterious profession. It's very not clear on what exactly we do. I've been married for 15 years, and my wife still's like, wait, so there's project architects that are more technical, and then design architects, and then there's project managers. You all went to school for the same thing, but part of it, I don't know if that's just, evolve over time of the profession or what, but I think it's just, there was a time, I think it's waning in popularity. I think is what I've heard, in terms of like enrollment in schools.
Yeah.
But I'm not really sure what to attribute that to.
It's pretty big here at ASU, to tell you the truth. I know a lot of people that are in architecture now. I can't say that they're very passionate about architecture, but they definitely have valid reasons as to why they do it. So it's interesting that you say that, because I notice all the time that it's more popular as a career choice. But maybe historically, I think with all art histories, including, fine art, it's not all that intriguing in the beginning until you kind of learn you really want to do that with your life. And I guess talking about project management and just projects in general, do you have any notable or key projects or buildings that, they can be nostalgic to you? I guess maybe some of your first projects you worked on, or even recent ones.
Yeah, I think there's a couple that I can, maybe two ends of the spectrum. So one thing that was instilled in me at that my first job out of college with that design director that used to be my professor is he was always involved in the arts community in Detroit and then in West Michigan where we were. So always trying to find opportunities to do installations, ways to benefit, and also to make us better as designers and artists, within the profession by testing things that you don't necessarily get to do on day-to-day projects. So that's something that I've carried through to my career. And one of the most recent ones is there was a competition in Detroit it was called Detroit Design Festival. So every year they have this festival where different design professions throughout the city would come and have displays and installations. So every year they have a different type of competition. And the year that we entered, while I was at Smith Group, which is one of the larger firms in Detroit, it was an urban furniture design competition. So I'm starting with the small scale, and then I'll move to the large scale. But
of course.
So basically, the idea was to create a piece of urban furniture to go in the city, and that's it. That was an open-ended as it was. So we had a small group of young designers at Smith Group that were very interested in this topic and multidisciplinary. So we had engineers, for interior design, architects. So our concept was to create. Have you heard of a mesh hub network? So basically, you have the little kind of like your router, your Wi-Fi routers, but you have a bunch of them, and it can spread the Wi-Fi out further and further.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
The idea was to bring Wi-Fi signals into the city that where they're weak. So
Mhm.
this hub that we called it the hub
Mhm.
would be sort of the central node of where that signal is originated, and then there could be a series of these placed around. But they could also be used for bus stops or gathering places in a park or something like that. So the idea was to bring people together, and we designed it in such a way that it was simple materials and easy construction. So it was PVC pipes that sort of leaned together in a TP form and created some form of a shelter.
Nice.
And then we ended up winning that competition. So as part of winning is you had to build it. So then our group also had to figure out how to build it, construct it, and that turned out really well. It was displayed at that design festival,
Mhm.
and then it's, as far as I know, it's installed in the city somewhere today and in use.
Nice.
So that was pretty cool. Um, I'd say the other projects that I would say maybe not most proud of, but what I learned the most on was for the school, University of Michigan, their School of Dentistry. So that was sort of my first project where I was tasked with being sort of the lead designer.
Okay.
And it was I had sort of been proving myself throughout the years, and it was a, $200 million project. So
Mhm.
it sort of pushed me into a realm of, the firm kind of believing in me and saying, okay, we trust you. We know you can handle this.
Mhm.
And it was a highly complex project, very large team. It had, labs in it, research labs. It had the dental clinic, where they train dentists to work on people's teeth. So there's a bunch of,
Yeah.
a lot of really complex, and part of it was an existing building. So there was just a highly complex project. So I learned a ton on that project. It's not necessarily going to be one that, you see in magazines or anything like that, because it's kind of covered up.
Yeah.
The old building is kind of in front of the new building, but as a learning experience, I think I learned an incredible amount of, you know, just all that goes into
Mhm.
architecture. And I think, one of the pieces I feel like maybe gets a little bit not quite understood by some, the average person is really our role in a project like that is to sort of be the organizer of everybody. So all of the engineers,
Yeah.
the landscape designers, IT, the client, we're sort of at the front, sort of organizing the whole group and getting all the information to form it into a cohesive, um, built
Mhm.
thing, right? So that's sort of where the technical side comes in. I think, that's something that probably, if you're looking at a lot of beautiful buildings in magazines and things like that,
Mhm.
there's an incredible amount of work that goes into making those things happen that probably not a lot of people really think about. Not only from the, engineering of how does it structurally stand up and how does it attach, but, construction as well,
Yeah.
construction partners figuring out, where are we going to put the crane? Where are we going to put all the materials when they get delivered to the site? We have to figure out, it's even more complex in an urban environment than it is, in a green field, but
For sure.
just a lot of that comes into play, and you sort of have to be able to live in that world. There's
Mhm.
only a few architects in the world that, don't that can kind of have the big, great, grand idea and then
Mhm.
kind of have someone else figure it out after that.
Yeah.
So it's not very many people get to play in that world. It's,
Yeah.
and even once you do, I'm guaranteed those architects that get to that point, they had a lot of time working through the very challenging, the technical. You have to be able to understand that to know how to make things work. So
Yeah, of course. It does sound a lot like just almost like filmmaking, and to an extent
yeah,
in terms
yeah,
of the production side, and letting that bleed into the director's side.
that's a good
And
analogy. Yeah,
yeah, I didn't think about the smaller percentage of architects that, yeah, can hand off their projects with someone and really trust them. Because I would think at one point you do want to be more so in the field because you're used to that pressure in that environment. Have there been times where you felt like you couldn't do a project, but then the execution beat your own expectations?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that happens a lot in
Mhm.
architecture. Where, I think you and I were talking about this
Yeah.
before. We're architects are always kind of procrastinators and waiting till the last minute and spending all night doing things. And I think because for us, at least I know I'm this way. I feel
Mhm.
like nothing's ever done. It's like I can always make it better. So
Yeah.
why stop and just say, okay, it's done. Now I'm just going to sit here. So you always want to just keep tweaking it until the very last minute when you can't change it anymore. And usually that just, that's like till the last minute when you have to hit export on your InDesign
Yeah.
or print on the renderer, or whatever it is. It's like you're waiting till the last minute.
Yeah.
Um, I can't think of a specific example, but there are. I would say that's a fairly regular occurrence and something you get better at
Hmm.
the more you do it. I'm at the point now where I can have almost no direction
Hmm.
at the beginning of a project and be like, man, I don't know. We only have a week to do this. I don't know if we can do this, but
Hmm.
we probably could if we do it this way and
Yeah.
strategically just focus on these key pieces.
Hmm.
We can figure it out and get there. And then it ends up working out. So I think once you've done it enough, you realize, okay, it seems daunting, but it always works out, and we'll figure it out.
For
So
sure. For sure. I don't know the architect side of it, but I definitely know the like just in terms of branding, because that's what I do in my free time, and I feel like I've gotten a lot more trust with it.
yeah.
Definitely know what that's like when someone's like, "Hey, we want to make a lookbook in 3 days." And
Right. Yeah, exactly.
yeah, I'm like, "Oh, well, we could. It's gonna be tough, but yeah." Um, so I guess the last question then is, what's a what's a day like within your design process? Do you work mostly from home at this point, or do you still work with your team really closely, or as much as you can? I know you guys are working pretty remote right now, but
Yeah.
yeah, what is that
Yeah.
design process like?
It's definitely changed. The way, one of my favorite parts uh, of what I do is those early visioning and design meetings with clients in a group setting. I said it's very challenging to get a group together,
Yeah.
but that is really a fun part of the design process. A group of, let's say there's 3 people on our side and six or so people on their side. As long as there's one person from each team that's
Hmm.
the end all be all. If it's me, if there's a design question, okay, we're doing this. Or on the client side, are we doing 2 stories or 3 stories? We need
Hmm.
someone on each side that can be that person. If you don't have that, that's when it gets challenging. But
Hmm.
being in those meetings and helping clients sort of not think about things, in a concrete way, colors of bricks or
Hmm.
number of stories or number of square feet, just ideas. How can we be the best? How can we attract the most new talent? Let's say
Hmm.
if it's a workplace client, or how can we make this the best business school building in the country, um, and have the best business school in the country. Those are my favorite parts of being an architect.
Hmm.
And beforehand it was in a room sketching on walls, putting post-it notes up.
Yeah.
Now I feel like it's shifted. I feel like we'll still go back to that a little bit, but we
Hmm.
have found some really nice tools that allow us to do that in a digital format like this.
Hmm.
We use Miro.
Hmm.
I don't know if you guys are using that at all.
Yeah. I recently had to. Yeah.
It's great, and
Yeah.
it has a lot of that same ability to be live, and it's a living thing that can move and adapt in real time while you're using it.
Hmm.
um, it's not, definitely nothing beats in person
Hmm.
designing, but I think that's one of my favorite pieces. And I do feel like what's nice for me in the design world is sort of having that variety of tasks.
Hmm.
So you have that side of it, which is the more client social interaction.
Hmm.
Then sort of the next phase for me is sort of um, maybe the review process of, I work with a team creating some concepts in the computer and a 3D model or sketching.
Yeah.
and then sort of sharing that with my team, and then someone else brings an idea, and then we sort of adapt it, share it with the client, coming back. That's sort of an intermediary. And then the third step is the more technical side, where we have to turn this thing into basically blueprints or a recipe for the contractor to build.
Yeah.
So we need all the technical, the wall sections of how the wall is going to be built, every piece of equipment, all the electrical needs, the mechanical needs, where the light switch is going, all that stuff. So it's sort of a spectrum through the process, and even into construction, where I have a project under construction right now,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm reviewing samples. So samples will come in for, let's say, the wood doors, or whatever it is, and I have to review it. This is what we had designed intent based on. This is what the actual sample looks like that the contractor is able to get. Even now, it's even completely different, because there's certain, you can get the red and the blue carpet, but you can't get the green carpet because it's got a delay.
Yeah.
Whatever reason, because of the way we're in the shipping crunch we're in now. So I feel like for me, that's something that I enjoy, and it really helps you. I feel like if I was always designing and always sketching,
Mm-hmm.
there'd be so many other things that I missed. And I feel like actually that's one thing looking back I missed in my early career. I was kind of the graphics guy, so I was always doing sort of the renderings, the colored floor plans, the colored elevations, and I had very little experience getting into the technical side. So then when I got into larger firms and got on bigger projects, people were expecting you to know some things that I didn't know, because I hadn't done that in my early career. So, I wouldn't want to do that full time either. I couldn't just be, in Revit drawing, floor plans and doing that all day long either. I would go crazy. I need the creative outlet. So for me, I don't know, what my life would look like if I had gone into the arts field. Yeah. I'm guessing I'd be a graphic designer. That's probably just guessing.
Yeah.
But to me, even that has a similar sort of world, right? You have some time where you're sketching, creating, ideation, and then you got to sort of get it to the more, concrete and, exact file prepping. And
Yeah.
so maybe that's just the nature of the design world, no matter what direction it's in. But
Yeah,
for me, I feel like it's a good balance. There's the right amount
mm.
of each type of task.
Yeah, no, I was about to say, I think with architecture, there is a stronger emphasis on execution for sure.
Yeah.
But within other fields of design, it is a lot of like conceptual art, I think, with graphic design and, even real mediums such as printmaking and painting, you can kind of get away with, just making conceptual art all the time. And people will look for that direction. I think with architecture and fashion as well, it is a bit, and even film. I mean, it is more, the execution will lead to a product, and then
Yeah.
people either love or hate that product.
Right.
You can, I think with fine art and graphic design, you can kind of get away with your avant-garde excuse, but the expectation for film, fashion, and architecture are all based within the execution, which pressure makes diamonds, though. I think.
Yep.
I think those three are the most notable out of all the art realms for sure. Yeah. So I guess that before we go, is there any architects that you looked up to, or I'm taking my current class on Peter Zumthor.
Oh yeah.
He's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you have, a favorite, building by him, or maybe anything notable from him, or even other architects,
Yeah.
feel free
No,
to say
there was one that we looked at a lot
Yeah.
in college. I think that's kind of a good example of what you can do when you have, he's one of those unique architects that gets the opportunity to kind of spend an entire year or more on one project, and really, he nails it down and gets every little detail perfect. So studying one material, it's like you get one material on this whole building. Oh, glass. You get glass plus this one material, and you gotta, you spend your whole year figuring out, how everything transitions and
Mhm.
every space is scaled just right. The one project that I really like of his is the baths,
Yeah.
the thermal
Yeah.
baths. Yeah. Um, One of my other favorite architects, I think that I would say, it's hard to say, but I feel like Renzo Piano is one that
Mhm.
I really appreciate because I do feel like he is one of the few that maybe is he is right on the center of that line between creativity, art, and then engineering and technical precision. He
Yeah.
not one way or the other. He's right on that line and he's been doing it better than anybody. And
Mhm.
what I like about his work is it's not always the same. He'll do some things that are take the two projects that I've seen in person. So the Chicago Art Museum is
Mhm.
one, and then the San Francisco um, Science Center.
Mhm.
Completely different projects. One's got the organic flowing forms, and one is, like just white everything and white rhythms in it. They each fit into their context perfectly. And I think for me, that's always what I'm trying to strive for is how do you make this building feel like it was meant to be there and it will last a long time and it's not it's not trying so hard. It's just really well done and well integrated.
Mhm.
His projects always have a good integration of the mechanical systems, the electrical. You just don't
Mhm.
you don't notice things. You don't notice that they're there. So to me, that's how it was done well because
Mhm.
you don't question, no, why is that there, or you don't even notice those things. It's just
Yeah. Yeah, no, those always make great projects. I think my favorite project that unfortunately had a misfire with it because it wasn't built for flooding was the farmer house. I think was it. Maybe I'm wrong, but it was all glass case house and it was all geometric. But and it was in that location of why is this there? Um, then
right.
it got flooded.
Yep.
So it's like, oh, that's why I shouldn't have been there probably. But yeah, I think sometimes the coolest projects and the most unique locations, they can get a little bit more suffering than maybe what buildings that are have brutalist approaches. They don't have to worry too much being all concrete.
But I think I actually think I learned more
Hmm.
from two of my professors. So the one that I went and worked for in Michigan, that one for
Hmm.
sure. He was a master with
Hmm.
the client. Making the client feel comfortable, making them feel like you understood what you were talking about.
Yeah.
How you were how are you going to translate their vision and make them a better company or a better entity, not just companies, but could be a school, could be a church, could be whatever.
Hmm.
After they go through the design process with you. That's really what I learned from him and aspire to achieve. Then the other is one of my professors in grad school at UT who owns his own firm, Juan Moreau, and I think what I learned from him was uh, really a sensitivity. He was someone who came from the same school of thought as Santiago Calatrava, so he had a dual degree in architecture and structures.
Hmm.
So he always thought of the building and the structure as one, and really forced us to think about the building and the structure being one.
Yeah.
Also, knitting the building into the landscape and making sure it fits its context, sort of like it's meant to be there, that kind of thing. And those are two that to me I felt have really shaped me more so than looking at architects and magazines and things like that. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think the more personable, the better for
yeah,
sure.
right,
Because it is hard for. I mean, I don't know, every kid growing up that played sports was inspired by, Kobe or Michael Jordan. But, over time, your dreams only stay alive, with really personable mentors. So if you don't
yeah,
have that, if you don't have someone that, you know, could really guide you personally, and, it kind of doesn't work out. So those personal experiences are always the best.
yep.
Um, All right. Yeah, I think we're good. I got a great amount of information, and man, I appreciate you doing this. Yeah, I know it's kind of last minute,
Oh,
so
yeah, no, this is great.
yeah, it was a good talk. Well, I'll catch up with you soon. And yeah, I appreciate you taking the time to do this again.
Sounds good. Yeah, no
All right,
problem.
Nate. Talk to you later.
Yeah, you too. Good luck.